Guardian, keeping you safe on Channel 5.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. We begin this evening with death by gunfire. A government study published today finds that more young black men between the ages of 15 and 19 will die as the result of gunfire than from any other cause. And with the exception of dying in a car crash, teenagers as an entire group are more likely to die as the result of guns than anything else. The reporting appears today in the Journal of the American Medical Association, and the former Surgeon General, C. Everett Koop, gave it some perspective. If this were a virus, he said, the nation would be shouting for a cure. Here's ABC's Bill Greenwood.
The study found that 1 out of every 700 black teenage males will be shot to death before he reaches the age of 20. Urban teenagers are not surprised.
Yeah, I know people that got shot and killed over girls, drugs, shot over coats, shot over real stupid stuff. And for me, it makes me feel terrible. Sometimes I don't even want to come outside.
The results can be seen in every big city where gunshot homicides have more than doubled over the past 10 years. Hardly a night goes by without a reminder on local newscasts.
The unrelated killings range from a carjacking to domestic violence to a fight at a school dance.
Researchers say when the public sees such images of violence over and over, they become desensitized.
A big part of the problem with violence in America is it's so common, society seems to accept it.
Authorities blame broken families, school dropouts, unemployment, and drug abuse. Senator John Chafee blames the simple availability of handguns and wants to outlaw them.
There's no reason in the world for our American society to have these handguns. No other society in the world has the prevalence of handguns.
With 67 million guns already in private hands, some youngsters at risk say it's too late.
It makes me feel scared because I don't know if I'm going to be next or if I'm going to know somebody who's going to be next. So I'm scared for me and I'm scared for my family.
There is reason for such fear. Authorities say in the nation's capital, it is cheaper to buy a gun than a gold chain. Bill Greenwood, ABC News, Washington.
Two more relevant, some would say frightening statistics from the government study. One high school student in 20 says he has carried a gun sometime in the past month. And 270,000 students say they've taken a gun to school. If you think this is only a problem in the cities, consider this report from Brian Rooney.
Granada Hills is considered one of the best Los Angeles suburban high schools, but it is not isolated from the problem of teenagers with guns. A year and a half ago, Mark Squires, a 15-year-old student, was shot and killed at a weekend party by another teenager. Many of the students here tell their teachers frightening stories about kids with guns.
Weapons, guns, and these highly sophisticated weapons have just become a part of lifestyles, it seems.
The guns are frequently used. Last year, a 9th grader was killed in a drive-by shooting near his junior high school in Sherman Oaks. In Colton, a 16-year-old shot and wounded a 15-year-old who later died. Age and location do not seem to matter.
No matter where you try to send your kid, it doesn't matter. A little 10-year-old with a 9mm?
Granada Hills has members of 36 gangs in its student body.
The 50s and 60s when kids, if they had a problem, they'd go outside a party and have a fight. Now it's escalated to the point where they feel they need weapons because they're not sure if the people that they're dealing with might have weapons.
Suburbs have long been looked at as the safe and quiet places to raise children, but kids are starting to get guns in the suburbs just as easily as in the city. Brian Rooney, ABC News, Los Angeles.
In a moment, we'll have some of the other news. Further embarrassment for the U.S. at the Earth Summit. The Europeans go ahead with tougher standards on greenhouse gases. Global warming is on the American agenda tonight, looking for early warning signs. And finally from us, the great library ripoff. Massive theft from the library shelves.
This is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings, brought to you by DuPont.
Recently, DuPont announced that its energy unit Conoco would pioneer the use of new double-hulled oil tankers in order to safeguard the environment. The response has been overwhelmingly positive. better things for better living.
Now, first-time buyers can get up to $900 in additional savings on new Jeep Wranglers.
The National Endowment for the Arts, the NEA, is in the news again today. A federal judge has decided that the NEA may not use its so-called decency clause in deciding whether to award artistic grants. The clause says that applicants are to be assessed on their general standards of decency. The judge says the right to challenge conventional wisdom and values is a cornerstone of artistic and academic freedom. At the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro today, the U.S. found itself further isolated from the rest of the industrialized nations on the matter of global warming. The nations of the European community have decided to go a big step further than the U.S. in trying to protect the Earth's climate, or at least control the Earth climates, and they have done so in a very public way. ABC's Barry Serafin is in Rio.
The issue of global warming was a headache the U.S. thought had gone away when a compromise treaty was signed last week. But it turns out that treaty, weakened at U.S. insistence, did not go far enough for European countries. Today, they reaffirmed their commitment to stabilize greenhouse gas emissions by the end of this century, something the U.S. has refused to do.
Well, I think that the United States is perhaps losing a very good opportunity to show that they are a leading country in the world.
The U.S. was already on the defensive after reports that it was pressuring three countries, Austria, Holland, and Switzerland, to back off from their plans to set specific timetables for controlling greenhouse gases. That, said the head of the U.S. delegation, would detract from the treaty already agreed upon.
We are concerned to try to avoid a distracting effort or anything that would imply that the climate treaty is not going to get the full priority of concern and attention.
The European community appears to be trying to help keep the United States from embarrassment on another treaty. The U.S. has refused to sign a treaty designed to protect endangered plants and animals. ABC News has obtained a confidential statement drawn up by the Europeans. It is tailored to meet U.S. objections on issues such as protecting the rights of American high-tech companies which use genes of rare species to develop new products.
From at first blush, it looks like a constructive move.
No one expects the U.S. to sign the treaty itself, but the statement drawn up by the Europeans might be a document the Bush administration could sign, something positive for the president's visit. Barry Serafin, ABC News, Rio de Janeiro.
Well, the main topics on President Bush's agenda today were politics and a balanced budget amendment, and they're very much connected. In our latest poll, which we reported on yesterday, the president's popularity is at an all-time low. And that contributes to the debate over whether the president's current political strategy needs to be changed. Here's ABC's Britt Hume.
The president today was following the political script he and his advisors have written for him, staying in Washington to work with Congress, as he puts it, to get something done for the country. Today, that something was the balanced budget constitutional amendment.
Well, the American people want it done. And here's a good, clear case to take to the Congress and say, look, the American people want this.
Outside later, Republican leaders cited as an example of why they think a balanced budget amendment is needed what's become of Mr. Bush's request for emergency aid for victims of the L.A. riot. They said Mr. Bush may now have to veto the bill.
We have gridlock in American government, and this is a typical example. The president asked for $490 million of emergency assistance. The Congress sends a bill back down to the White House spending $2 billion.
But that is far from all the trouble the president is having on Capitol Hill. This year, Mr. Bush has pushed Congress for his versions of an economic growth package, for urban enterprise zones and other measures to help the inner cities, and for reform of medical care, welfare, and the nation's legal system. But Congress has its own ideas and priorities, and Mr. Bush has gotten none of his passed. And the opposition of Democratic leaders such as House Speaker Foley means he may not get his balanced budget amendment either.
With the passage of a balanced budget amendment, we would become a weaker nation, in my view, weaker at home, weaker abroad, weaker economically, weaker militarily, and weaker politically.
Republicans think it looks good for the president to back, even unsuccessfully, a balanced budget amendment while the Democrats oppose it.
But it might also be seen as a sign of the futility of the president's current political strategy. Instead of taking on his two opponents, he stays mostly inside the Beltway, trying to do business with the only people in town whose approval ratings are lower than his. Britt Hume, ABC News, the White House.
Some news about people's money today. Overseas investors are spending less of their money to buy into American companies. The government says that new direct foreign investment, that is foreign efforts to buy 10% or more of an American company, fell 66% last year from the year before. Given the recession, which has been worldwide, many foreign banks appear hesitant to lend investors the capital they need to buy American. The Seattle Mariners baseball team is soon going to have new owners. Major League Baseball has given preliminary approval to the head of Nintendo US, the head of the U.S. subsidiary of Nintendo, to buy the Mariners. It'll be the first time that someone from outside North America has been permitted to own a major league team. A down day today on Wall Street. The Dow Jones Industrials average lost more than 34 points, closed at 33.69, and the trading was active. The actor Ben Vereen is in critical condition tonight in a Los Angeles hospital. Vereen was out walking near his home in Malibu, California, early this morning, as he often does for exercise, when he was hit by a passing truck. We'll be back in just a moment.
Morning! What's for breakfast in modern times?
Oh, just cereal.
Back in my century, we enjoyed grains kept whole for a more natural, hearty taste. New Greek grains. You bet it's great. Toasted wheat, oats, and barley. Kept whole, full of flavor.
Great. Dates, raisins, even pecans. This really is delicious.
Now I'm hungry. Got another bowl?
What was great back then is great grains now. A great new cereal from Post.
You probably think the best American car value is some little econo box you have to settle for, right? Nope. It's a Buick. The luxurious Buick Park Avenue. That's according to the Complete Car Cost Guide. They calculated the 5-year cost of depreciation, financing, insurance, fuel, maintenance, and repairs, and found that Park Avenue is the best American car value. For a free reprint from the Complete Car Cost Guide, call 1-800-4-BUICK.
Polyshades by Minwax. It's a stroke of genius. Polyshades is rich stain and polyurethane protection in one. Polyshades gives wood a beautiful protective finish in half the time. Polyshades by Minwax.
The formula was developed by a surgeon, now from the makers of Preparation H, new soothing alcohol-free cleansing tissues. They clean and refresh after hemorrhoid attacks. New cleansing tissues from the makers of doctor-recommended Preparation H.
A team of United Nations military observers is going to Sarajevo tomorrow to see whether it will be possible to reopen the airport there. What they'll be looking for are signs that the Serbian militia, which controls the hills outside the city, is willing to stop the shelling so the UN can fly in food and medicine and water. So far, there is no sign of a ceasefire. Here's ABC's David Ensor.
As Sarajevo burns, a Muslim defender fires his primitive rifle. Yesterday saw the heaviest fighting so far. Serbs using high-powered artillery to pound the city. After a lull, it resumed today. At hospitals, the wounded arrive every few minutes. In the operating rooms, they are running short of supplies.
We had more than 250 wounded and about 30 dead.
And that is just at this hospital. There are several in the city. The morgues are so full that bodies of dead soldiers are left outside in the street. Their comrades grieve over them. The city is full of 19 and 20-year-olds trying to cope with the death of their friends. The people of Sarajevo now live in basements. Welcome to hell, this man says.
They are bombing us. We are here waiting without water, without food. That's it.
In those neighborhoods without food or water, cut off from the rest of the city by gunfire, UN officials say it is a matter of days before the young and the elderly start to die of dehydration. Sarajevo is a city overcome with fear, shock, and fatigue. David Ensor, ABC News, Belgrade.
For those who have fled their homes because of the fighting, This is a fairly typical example of where they wind up. A sports arena converted into a refugee center in the neighboring Republic of Croatia. The number of refugees created by the civil war in what used to be Yugoslavia is now nearly 2 million. All across southern Italy today, in fact, during the past couple of days, hundreds of men have been arrested for allegedly being members of the Mafia. This is the government's response to the recent killing of a judge who was leading the government's fight against organized crime. In Israel today, final arguments in the long, very controversial appeal of John Demjanjuk, who the government of Israel says is the Nazi war criminal Ivan the Terrible. The Supreme Court is now expected to take several months trying to decide whether Demjanjuk, a retired auto worker who used to live in Cleveland, is, after all, the right man. Here's ABC's Dean Reynolds.
It had seemed so clear-cut 5 years ago when John Demjanjuk faced the emotional but 40-year-old recollections of survivors of the Treblinka concentration camp. But even after the court returned its guilty verdict and sentenced Demjanjuk to hang, doubts remained about whether he was really Ivan the Terrible, the sadistic guard who helped put 800,000 Jews to death. Last fall, Demjanjuk's defense obtained KGB files from the old Soviet Union, including the testimonies of 37 camp guards who were at Treblinka and who said someone else, someone named Ivan Marchenko, was really the terrible one. That's when the prosecution began changing its case, asserting that even if Demjanjuk was not Ivan, there is evidence he was a guard at another death camp, and his conviction should stand. But as Demjanjuk came into court today in Jerusalem, a federal appeals court in Ohio was asking new questions about his extradition to Israel in 1986, suggesting it may have been based on erroneous information about Demjanjuk's past. Yesterday, even one of the Israeli judges said there would be no point in proceeding if it cannot be proved that Demjanjuk was Ivan. To Demjanjuk's attorney, the prosecution's case has collapsed.
It is true that it is sufficient for us to raise doubts, but we've gone much way and above beyond it.
But even if this verdict is overturned, evidence that Demjanjuk was a guard at a different death camp may lead Israel to put him on trial again, something that could cause trouble with the government of the United States if it decides Demjanjuk should never have been sent to Israel in the first place. Dean Reynolds, ABC News, Tel Aviv.
We'll have more news in just a moment.
How could this happen? They've taken the secret.
Europeans are upset. The Kellogg's Muesli cereal uses their secret recipe.
Yes, we kept in the family.
After all, they've been guarding this delicious secret forever. Ah, but this luscious blend of sweet fruit, crunchy nuts, and crisp whole grains was destined to become Kellogg's Mueslix.
Angelina, you told?
It wasn't me. I swear.
Kellogg's Mueslix, the European secret for great taste.
Morning breath.
As soon as I have my coffee, it's all gone.
Whether you admit it or not, it's a problem.
Okay, I have morning breath, but it doesn't bother anyone.
Don't be so sure.
Mine's not so bad.
Morning breath's not as bad as you think. It's worse. So get Scope. Its 2 powerful ingredients kill 90% of the bacteria that cause morning breath.
Was my morning breath really that bad?
There's no denying morning breath, so save your breath with Scope. Can a razor cut your beard off below the skin without the blades even touching your face? It can if it's a Norelco. Norelco's patented lift and cut system lifts the hair, so when it's cut, it can actually drop below skin level without the blades even touching your face. Are you getting a shave this incredibly close and exceptionally comfortable? You are when you shave with Norelco. Norelco, we make close comfortable.
Tylenol users discover a powerful name in aspirin-free pain relief.
It took away my headache. Aspirin-free Anacin worked as well as Tylenol.
Like Tylenol, aspirin-free Anacin is 100% aspirin-free acetaminophen, so it's gentle on your stomach.
Now I have a choice.
Everybody needs some money sometime.
Only Western Union can get money to over 16,000 locations in minutes. Nobody else even comes close. Western Union, the fastest way to send money.
On the American agenda tonight, how do we know there really is a danger of global warming? As we reported from Rio this evening, with or without the U.S., Europe is going to put very strict limits on those gases that have the potential, at least, to trap heat in the Earth's atmosphere, like a greenhouse. The Bush administration is refusing to do so because it says the case for global warming is not compelling enough to demand that American industries use less oil and gas. We asked our agenda reporter Ned Potter to explain what the evidence is.
These scientists are going diving to look for the greenhouse effect. Why look underwater? Because this coral reef skirting the Florida Keys is normally darkened by algae, but the water here has been warmer than normal over the last decade, forcing algae out and leaving some patches bleached.
I think the coral bleaching is clearly a signal of greenhouse warming.
Tundi Agardi is a biologist with the World Wildlife Fund.
It's not a local thing. This is a global thing. Regardless of whether corals are in proximity to big population centers, regardless of how they're managed, everywhere in the world we're seeing some bleaching.
There's fairly little scientific debate over whether global warming is an issue, but there are many questions about how soon, how severely, and in what ways we're most likely to feel it. So scientists are looking for what they call greenhouse signals, the first ecological changes that clearly can be linked to the warming. The list of possibilities keeps growing. At the University of Delaware, Dr. Zhouhai Yan has used satellite data to track a giant warm spot in the waters of the South Pacific. It has grown warmer and larger over the last decade, and Yan says it is probably a combination of regional weather patterns and greenhouse warming. At the University of Michigan, biologists have been documenting several plant and animal species as their habitats shift northward. One type of orchid, which dies in hot weather, could be found in this region 40 years ago, but has now retreated north almost 100 miles.
These species may be early warning indicators that tell us that natural ecosystems are beginning to respond to climate change.
The key phrase there is "maybe," because for every sign that suggests greenhouse warming, there is another to cloud the picture. Clouds themselves are a question mark. In a greenhouse world, more clouds would form, but would they shield us from the sun's heat or trap more of it close to the earth? Likewise, nobody can say how much additional heat the oceans would absorb, or how much we can count on trees to absorb greenhouse gases. Even smoke from volcanoes, power plants, and the burning of rainforests may act as a temporary sunshade. That leaves a lot of room for some people to say,
although we should be concerned with the issue, greenhouse warming is essentially a non-problem for all practical purposes.
S. Fred Singer is a scientist who often defends industries like coal and oil, which are less concerned about the climate than about drastic economic measures being proposed to protect it.
Anytime you try to limit the use of energy, you're really limiting economic growth.
This conference at Rio, the U.S. has been mindful of that argument, trying to stop any agreement it says would cost American jobs. Environmentalists say that's short-sighted because a few prudent steps like energy efficiency can pay for themselves even if global warming never happens.
People often wonder, why should we do anything about the greenhouse effect until we're sure? Well, we're not sure before we buy insurance to protect our health. We often make operations on our body when one doctor says do and one says don't. Why is it that environmental scientists should be 99% sure?
Many of them say they may be sure within 10 years, but that meanwhile, more and more industrial gases will get into the atmosphere, unlikely to dissipate for decades. That's why researchers say it is important to watch now for the satellite readings and plant records and dying corals that may be telling us something. Ned Potter, ABC News, near Key West, Florida.
Today's American Agenda. We'll be back in just a moment.
Now first-time buyers can get up to $900 in additional savings on new Jeep Wranglers.
I tried it, and I feel great.
You're going to feel great all morning.
You've got to try it.
Try Grape Nuts, the fat-free natural energy source. See how good you feel.
It's a natural energy source that helps keep me going.
Breakfast with Grape Nut cereal helps keep me going all morning.
And the taste?
It's really delicious. Really hearty.
There's nothing quite like it.
There's only one way to really get to know Grape Nuts.
Try it for a week. Try it for a week.
You'll feel so good you did.
Breakfast with Post Grape Nut cereal helps keep you going strong all morning long.
Do you really think naphtha can be replaced with a non-flammable solvent?
In 1929, she was the only woman and the only PhD chemist in the physics lab. But over the years, she was responsible for 29 different patents.
Hello, I'm Sylvia Stacer.
Dr. Stacer created a new career path for women and for her company. The same company that leads the nation in patents granted to women over the last decade. We think Dr. Stacer would be pleased.
Thou lets you do great things.
Tonight on Nightline, how the Bush administration helped to arm Iraq before the Gulf War. Some in Congress want to make a criminal case out of it. Tonight.
Finally from us this evening, ripping off the library. Nothing so inoffensive as genuinely forgetting to return a book and putting your local librarian to the trouble of chasing you. No, this is about greed and other selfishness on a very large scale that begins at the very top. Here's ABC's Walter Rogers.
The Library of Congress contains 10 million books. It is the largest library in the world, and scholars come here from everywhere. But in recent years, this library has been systematically looted.
It's a moral outrage. It's destroying the nation's patrimony for people for generations to come. Many of the things that are being stolen or mutilated are one-of-a-kind things.
A few mutilated pages on a table are all that is left of what used to be priceless books from the collections of the Library of Congress. Thieves sliced out the other prints, selling them to antique and art dealers and interior decorators. It has become a booming market.
This volume, however, was the only one in the United States. It's worthless now. I mean, there's nothing even to attach value to.
300 of the library's rare books of architectural drawings and lithographs have been razored to ribbons. Floral prints like these go for $300 a piece. It frustrates authors like Lynn Shaner, who need such prints to write her botanical history of the United States.
I get angry because there may be some things we'll never be able to go and find again, or go and learn about again.
The problem is not unique to the Library of Congress. Public libraries all over the country have enormous problems with theft and mutilation. Titles easily available in stores, like computer or car repair manuals and cookbooks, often disappear from library shelves. Many libraries spend as much replacing stolen books and installing expensive security systems as they have to spend for buying new books. Most librarians agree the problem is nationwide and growing. To make matters worse, nearly all libraries lack the staff to conduct inventories, so no one really knows how much they have lost. Walter Rogers, ABC News, Washington.
And that is our report on World News Tonight. I'm Peter Jennings. We'll see you tomorrow. Good night.
This has been a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.
Everybody's talking about the new hit show of the spring.
Thank you. Thank you.
Critics give it 4 stars and call it the most delightful new show of the year.
Enjoy. I love you.
Anything can happen at Jack's Place. Hal Linden, Finola Hughes, and guest star L.A. Law's Michelle Green. Jack's Place, Tuesday.
I heard you guys got a great deal on the '93 Ford Escort.
Not a deal, a whole new way of buying. 4 Escorts, one price, $10,499.
Not so fast. I want power steering, rear defrost, and a good stereo.
Still one price.
All right, I want air conditioning. And what if I want a hatchback or a sedan?
$10,499.
Right now, you can get any one of 4 new '93 Escorts, all well-equipped for only $10,499. No gimmicks, no hidden costs. See your Ford dealer today.
How about a wagon?
$10,499.
Just checking.
The big fun's on the big one, the President Riverboat Casino.
Are you stuck in a job with no chance to advance? Call the National Education Center for a copy of this brochure.
Find out how you could train for a career in electronics in a lot less time than you think.
Find out about NEC's hands-on training, professional instructors, and flexible class schedules.